All right, so what is reparenting? What is conscious reparenting? What does that mean when I'm talking about reparenting the inner child or conscious reparenting, reparenting yourself? So, reparenting means I have an inner child and I'm going to learn how to parent that child in a different way so that that inner child is not traumatized, wounded, hurt, taking the steering wheel from a really crazy place, right? Like when we have our inner child that's wounded, we are wounded because of our childhood, because of how we were parented, because of the choices our parents made, what have you. And oftentimes there's traumas that happen that, the parents didn't even necessarily do anything wrong. Sometimes our inner child just didn't understand, right? So you think about the developing brain of a child when we were children and we didn't really understand, we didn't have context, we didn't have experience, we didn't have anybody explaining stuff to us, we didn't have a whole, fully developed brain. A lot of times these things and experiences that we have that are often normal can land in the body and the brain in a very traumatic way. And that meaning they just misunderstand what happened. Their perspective is skewed, right? And so if you go back and you start inner child work and you realize like, wow, my inner child really thinks that I was abandoned here. And like for example, one of my stories, and I knew this consciously for a long time. This wasn't a hidden wound. It wasn't an unconscious wound. It was very conscious for me my whole life. And I knew it was a really powerful experience and memory that I had in my life. I didn't know it was going to be so ingrained in my purpose and what I'm doing now. But basically I was being sleep trained, and while I was being sleep trained I did have language, and so it was a memory that stuck consciously. I couldn't speak though, so language was still stuck in my head, and so I felt really disempowered with that whole dynamic in general. It's a really tough time for a child, as we all know, right? Like that really early age, 1 to 2 to 3 depending on the person. And I was 1 year old being sleep trained. I had language. I didn't know, I couldn't tell them. I couldn't tell my mom to just stay and sit. I don't need you to like touch me, hold me, nothing. Like and you don't need to stay forever. Just sit for a couple minutes while I fall asleep, because I'm really fast at falling asleep. And I always have been, and I knew that. And so I felt like it wasn't a burden. And this experience made me feel like it was a burden, right? And so obviously being sleep trained, she left. And I'd cry and she'd come back and lay me down, and I'd be like, oh, thank God she's back. She heard me. She sees me. I get, like, we're good. And I thought she would sit down, and she didn't, and she left. And this happened over and over again until finally one time I was just crying and she didn't come back. And in my memory, this experience very much landed as abandonment, but it wasn't abandonment. I wasn't being abandoned in any way. However, it landed that way in my brain, right? And I wasn't being seen. I wasn't being heard. I wasn't being acknowledged. My needs weren't understood, and they weren't being met. And so I took that in as abandonment, and therefore there's like an abandonment wound there, right? But that's not actually what happened. And so when I'm reparenting myself, I'm able to go in and explain things to my inner child in a way. Now my inner child can get it because I have a whole brain, and I can rewire those connections from that experience to, heal it, so that it's not there's not a limiting core belief from there of like, I'm a burden or I'm not worthy of somebody's time and connection. And so reparenting really gives you the power now. So we're no longer looking outwardly, like at our parents or for, somebody else to fix this for us, a partnership, a friend, anybody. It's no longer this outwardly seeking of somebody to come in and fill this and make me feel safe and whole again. It's really this inward transformation of, I'm going to give myself what I need. And I just need to tell my inner child the truth of what happened and explain it to her and connect with her and give her what she needed at that time. And so it's sort of a fun little healing practice and time travel experience where you get to go back in time and be with your inner child in a given experience, in a given memory, in a given moment, and really be what they needed, the parent that they needed, the person that they needed, give them the connection and the love that they needed, make them feel safe and worthy and loved and, just so good about the situation that felt so unsafe or scary or painful at the time. And so this as a whole is reparenting. On a deep level. On a surface level, reparenting is often looks like, having discipline in your life, showing up. And it's beautiful because today I really shifted the word discipline in my head to self-love. And so when you start to do this work, you realize that discipline and forcing showing up and doing the hard work of like waking up early, going to the gym and, eating stuff that's not yummy, like whatever it is, like all of those like shadow sides of these things that are supposed to be really good for us. And discipline is kind of like the word connected to those shadow sides. And for me today, as I was journaling, I just uncovered, I was like, wow, it's not discipline. When you really embody this and your inner mother is really connected with love, and your inner mother is who's showing up and taking care of you. Excuse me, you're no longer in this discipline space. Yes, there's discipline in the just true sense of the word of like, I'm going to show up even when I don't really want to, consistently, and I'm going to take care of myself even if it's not something that's super fun. But when you look at it from this perspective and you shift your perspective around it from discipline to self-love, it's like, oh, I really love myself and I'm going to love how I feel when I'm done with this. So I'm going to choose to do it, even if there's part of me that doesn't really want to right now. And, implementing systems, support systems, routines, whatever kinds of schedules, going to the doctor. Nobody likes doing that. But like, these are some of the things that really we have to do to take care of ourselves, and reparenting ourselves is kind of taking charge of that and doing so from a loving space rather than I got to do this. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what makes me like healthy and I just have to do this and, get through it. No, like I actually genuinely love myself and I love giving this to myself and I love how I feel when I do this. And I love how much happier and fulfilled and how much more of a capacity within my nervous system I have when I do this. When I show up for my meditation, I can handle bigger emotions for my child. When I show up for my physical practice, I can, my nervous system is soothed and open and receptive to whatever is going to come my way. I am more grounded in my truth, in my body, in my sense of self, that it's harder to rock me, right? Whatever's going to be thrown at me in the day. And so these sorts of things are like, I love myself, so I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to show up in this way and I'm going to mother myself in this way, right? And when I don't want to show up, I'm going to mother myself and be like, man, I see you. That really sucks. And you know what? If you really don't want to, you don't have to. You don't. But I think you're going to really love how you feel after you do it. So why don't we give it a try, right? Like that's mothering yourself and telling yourself like, I think I'm going to actually really like this. And so reparenting can look a variety of different ways. There's a deeper emotional reparenting. If you didn't have a very solid like emotional intelligence, base, as if you weren't taught emotional intelligence as a kid and you're struggling in that way with connecting with others and having healthy relationships and secure attachments and all of these things, you might also be struggling to consistently hold like a routine or and I don't mean like a really strict, like it's not a disciplinary like routine. It's just kids work best in routine. They know what's predictable, they know what to expect, and it's consistent, and they feel safe with that because they know what's up. They don't have a sense of time, and so their sense of safety lies within that sort of routine, and children respond really well to that. But there's a level of flexibility that needs to happen around that because we're all human. And so it's just a matter of like having this really flexible flow, like flexible structure to flow within and to flow with, that if children like it, we like it too, right? We're just grown children. So the more we can tap into that and do that for ourselves, the better. Because if we're struggling with a lot of these other things, the deeper emotional stuff, the limiting core beliefs are going to impact how you show up in these other surface level ways in your life with routines and self-care and, How are you really showing up for yourself in a variety of different ways that you can? How do you eat? What are you consuming in terms of TV, in terms of music, in terms of the news, in terms of yeah, I said food, but how are you what does your physical practice look like as in terms of exercising? What does your mental practices look like? Yeah, all of it. All of it. How do you show up in your job? Are you overdoing it and hustling and really trying to prove yourself? Are you a little bit lazy and procrastinating and like not really doing much at all? A lot of that is really deep seated in the nervous system. And so a lot of this work is how do we soothe the nervous system in a different way so that we can actually achieve what we desire? So reparenting is a variety of different things, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about taking responsibility for our lives, showing up in a different way, and really starting to be our own parent, like a real responsible, healthy one. I hope that helps you to understand what we're talking about when we're talking about reparenting. And conscious reparenting is just a take on conscious parenting. So that's a parenting style, right? There's a lot of different parenting styles. There's the authoritarian parenting style. There's like I want to say there's a permissive is the word, permissive parenting style. There's gentle parenting, there's positive parenting, there's conscious parenting. All of these are just different approaches, different styles, different types of parents. Often you're going to repeat whatever you experienced as a parent. However, conscious parenting allows you to break the cycles of whatever it is that you experienced, to be conscious of what's going on in your body, right? So if something's happening with your child, and even if you're not a parent, this applies, so stay tuned. Even if something is happening with your child is really struggling, having an emotional outburst, struggling internally with something that's happening. As a conscious parent, I'm able to be aware of how that makes me feel in my body. I'm able to be aware of my nervous system, regulate my nervous system first, and then focus on theirs. I'm going to co-regulate with them. I'm going to get curious about what's happening with them. I'm going to connect with them. And then if there's any shifts in behavior or discipline, that's going to happen last, because really in terms of discipline with conscious parenting, gentle parenting, positive parenting, all of that, all of them kind of collectively, you're really just helping them to learn and to understand what a better choice would have been, a better way to handle this. What can we do differently next time? And I come as a conscious person and a guide from my wounds, my nervous system, my responses to their behavior, and guide them through understanding their own. And so if I'm going to do this sort of approach with myself and my own inner child, I'm going to be conscious of my nervous system. I'm going to be conscious of when my inner child is throwing a tantrum, right? And saying, hey, look at me, look at this. I don't feel safe. Pay attention. There's certain things that happen for everybody's different, but certain things that'll happen in your body to tell you, hey, something's not right, something needs attention, let's look at this and let's heal it, because your inner child needs some attention, and you have to do so, like, be conscious of that. And so I call it conscious reparenting, because reparenting yourself takes a lot of consciousness. It takes a lot of awareness and paying attention to your body, to your nervous system, to your mental state, to your capacity, to your triggers, to how you're communicating in any given situation. So, yeah, I think that understanding the variety of different parenting styles can help you to understand how you're actually treating your own inner child, and talking to your own inner child, like the internal dialogue and the things that you're telling yourself, right? And this is why I focus a lot on, basically my programs and things are organized and structured in a way that I want the focus to be to help people create a different inner parent. So if you are supposed to learn how to love yourself from your parents, if they didn't, then that's how you're treating yourself, right? So you're not loving yourself. So you have an inner parent, let's just call it that, caregiver, mother, whatever, that is kind of might be degrading or neglectful or whatever, what have you. However you experienced your parents treating you as a kid that wounded you, there's a part of you that's repeating that and treating your inner child in that way. And so what I want to do is help people to understand this and consciously reparent, right? And so we're going to consciously change that part of us. We're going to transform that part from all of those, you know, flaws and faults that our parents had. They're human, so it's perfectly fine, but we don't want to continue that, right? Because we're suffering in a way. And so we're going to reparent that part of us. We're going to reparent our inner child, and we're going to do so by transforming the inner parent and the inner part of us that is either showing up or convincing ourselves that it's not safe to show up, right? And to take care of ourselves and to understand and be attuned to what it is that we actually even need. Whether you're just tired and need some rest, or whether you're really being like self-sabotaging in not showing up for exercise or whatever, what have you, and bringing that self-love rather than the forced discipline. So it's a really multifaceted word, and the meaning is really in depth and can be approached in a variety of different ways, but that's a lot of what I'm doing. I'm doing all of that, and I have the focus of really transforming this part of us inside. So yeah, I hope that's helpful for you to understand how to start just reparenting. It's really just bringing awareness. What are you telling yourself? What does your inner child need? When is your inner child talking? How do you know it's them? What is the inner mother or inner parent like? How are you showing up for yourself? Do you create structures for yourself that you can thrive in, or are you really kind of pushing along and like struggling through some of these things that are just normal things that we all do to take care of ourselves? I say normal, but a lot of us are struggling with it. So yeah, just start paying attention. Simple step one, just start paying attention to that and see where you're at.